Good evening, everybody. I am Nayyera. You may know me from a variety of different TV and radio outlets, but I spent so many years in government and in campaigns, and I have watched debates way too long, and I'm so glad I get to watch it. Not sitting in a press room, not sitting drinking bad coffee and being on deadline for anything, or trying to spin for one person or another. I'm just hanging out on my sofa, literally my sofa, with my chocolate chip cookie dough and my favorite bubbly water, which is the Trader Joe's bubbly water. It is the best and the cheapest. I'm telling you, folks, and I did not get paid for that promo. And I'm joined by Dave Cowell, who used to be the speechwriter for Vice President Kamala Harris. And Dave, you've been in the room with her so many times. There's so much chatter online and on the cable news about how she hasn't debated Trump before and he's done this 7 times. I mean, you've been in the room. What is she and what are the people around her doing and thinking in this moment?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Second of all, how dare you not send me some ice cream so that I could join you?
I don't know what you thought that we were going to do for a political debate party.
Well, I mean, here I am with my bottle of water. You're putting me to absolute shame.
Very healthy.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe I'm just making up for all those years of drinking that bad coffee that you were talking about.
Probably other things though, too.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, so thank you for having me on. But look, I think I have been in the room with the vice president a lot. And here is what I can tell you. This is obviously in some ways a defining moment for her and an enormous opportunity, one of the biggest of her career to date, certainly. At the same time, I think what people have seen over the past, let's say, 2 months now, is that perhaps nobody in the country is better prepared to be a presidential nominee, to run this campaign, and to face off against former President Trump than Kamala Harris.
Okay, what is it about her, right, that makes that statement true? Because I'm remembering the debate where she was up against Biden. It seems like a lifetime ago now. And she went directly like side to side and called him out on the realities of being Black in America and, being from a younger generation. And she spoke about being the kid who was busted. Like, is that the kind of thing that sets her apart? Is like that what she needs to be doing tonight? Is that what people need to hear? Or is that, quote unquote, too much of a primary message?
That's interesting. I think that the vice president is a very good debater, and she has been at this for 20 years. I mean, she was district attorney of San Francisco. She was attorney general of the biggest state in the country, and then senator of that state. And so I think, this is hardly her first debate. And I think what you're going to hear from the vice president is reasonable and rational thoughts. That's not what you're going to hear from Donald Trump.
Like, that's our threshold right now. Let's remind everybody.
Yeah.
Our threshold is rational, complete thoughts.
Yeah.
A full sentence that starts from one place and doesn't go halfway around the world and ends in another language.
Right, exactly. And instead of talking about Hannibal Lecter or whatever it is that pops into his brain that he was going to try to talk about tonight.
I missed the Hannibal Lecter thing, and now I'm really, really intrigued about how that got brought into this conversation. Was it about fava beans?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Was it like some weird thing about face masks and what you do behind bars? I mean,
your guess is as good as mine.
Things like that, but it's like, what's the Hannibal Lecter thing?
Again, former President Trump started talking about Hannibal Lecter in his speeches, and I think it was quite a surprise to everybody watching. And but look, it's an example of the kind of nonsense that you hear out of his mouth at debates, in convention speeches, when he's on television, and to your point. On the other side, so I expect to hear her talking about her plans to lower costs for Americans. That's groceries, that's prescription drugs. I mean, the things that actually matter in people's lives. I expect to hear her talk about her plans for a middle-class tax cut that would benefit 100 million Americans. And I expect her to talk about this contrast that we're talking about right now, which is
Yeah.
on one side, you have somebody who is serious, who is seasoned, and who has prepared for this debate to explain what she's doing and why. On the other side, you're probably going to hear some nonsense, frankly. And
Okay.
look, he's a good
Right?
debater.
Like
He's a good debater.
we
He's a showman.
the way we know about how this debate is going to go down is it's going to be those mics that are turned off. And this is all about the showmanship part of this, but the mics are going to be off. And there was a fancy statement that the campaign, Harris campaign sent out saying, well, you know, this does kind of benefit Trump, but if we don't agree to these rules, he's going to run away from a debate. And we just want to have a debate. So fine, she's okay with this. But how do you, I mean, when there's crosstalk, some important things are said, and I get it. You want to be able to stick to time and all of that, but that doesn't necessarily allow you to have, like you're saying, the real conversation. Turning off mics ends up being, okay, I'm going to have my 30-second talking points. Oh, hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
Not
I
at
was
all.
learning a lot today, so.
Used to be a speechwriter for the vice president and was talking about expectations for today. And I'm so glad you're joining us because I think one of my expectations and hopes as on behalf of suburban women everywhere is that there will be a push on women's health, specifically our bodies being ours, reproductive health care. And that's not something that, well, typically has come up. It's kind of scary knowing that we've known this has been an issue for a long time and that, you know, the Supreme Court and their federal benches and the Federalist Society has been working against choice for so long, but it just wasn't coming up in presidential debates. It was not a focus, and people are like, oh, it's all about the economy. And suddenly they're now realizing that women and men actually care about how they start their families. So take it away. I know you work with Planned Parenthood. This is your bread and butter. What are you hoping to see today?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And yeah, I mean, I definitely expect reproductive rights to be an issue that they talk about on the stage tonight. They have in the previous debates, which has been good to see. And as you've mentioned, like Democrats have been scared of this issue for years. But since the fall of Roe, seeing that it is an issue that motivates people and mobilizes them to the polls, it's been great to see people actually like stand in that and really talk about it. And over the past couple of weeks, we've seen Donald Trump really flounder on this again and again. You know, he's been asked about it. He's trying to have it both ways because he knows that he is the reason that a third of women in this country do not have full control of their bodies, that live in states with abortion bans. And he knows that that is unpopular. It's politically toxic for him. And he is trying to have it both ways by bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade, but also saying that he is going to be the best president for reproductive rights, which is an insane thing to say. But, you know, he is a very stable genius and he says crazy things all the time.
And the stable genius did say at one point that he was willing to prosecute women who had abortions. Yes. The same stable genius just a few weeks ago was like, sure, 6 weeks. I'm in Florida.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know you're pregnant yet. So we're going to stop you from doing anything about what's going on in your uterus. Dave, I love that you mentioned, Anthony, you mentioned the idea of how Democrats were running away from this up until Roe really disappeared. And I know that's Democrats writ large as a party, not activists, not folks who are issue-based. Dave, you know, is the vice president going to prosecute the case for women's rights or women's health care?
Well, you know she is because she has been for years. And with the vice president, that didn't just start when the Dobbs decision was issued, although certainly it kicked into overdrive there. And for the past, you know, as I think we would agree, over the past 2 years, the vice president has been out front across the country. She went to a reproductive rights clinic. I was with her in Tallahassee, Florida, when she spoke on the 50th anniversary of Roe versus Wade.
What does it look like to visit? And either one of you jump in here, because now I'm like, what does it look like to visit a reproductive clinic?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I think we can both talk about this. I mean, look, the vice president has been working on maternal health her entire career. And she has prioritized this issue and talked about the enormous disparities in maternal health outcomes, particularly among African American and Latino women. And she's talked about that for years. That's not new for her.
Mhm.
And so she's brought to this that background and knowledge where she can pick up the phone and call Planned Parenthood. She can pick up the phone and call Nayyera. She knows state legislators in every state in the country. And so she'll call them and say, hey, we're going to come and we're going to do a roundtable. And I want to hear, not just from the politicians, I want to hear about the people doing the work. I want to hear from the clinicians. I want to hear from the people. And as you said correctly, this isn't just a woman's issue. And I think the vice president has been very clear about that. Anybody who wants to start a family, anybody who cares about every American having their rights respected and valued and having their freedoms upheld should care about this issue.
Yeah, 100%. And I'd add as well, I mean, her visiting the Planned Parenthood clinic in Minnesota, she's the first vice president or president to ever do that. So that was a historic moment. And it was at that visit that
she was like, oh, and there's this guy, Tim Walz.
She met him at that visit. So we like to take credit for that of Planned Parenthood. But yeah, no, that is largely the reason they really bonded at that health center. But, you know, to Dave's point, like this is an issue that she has been talking about her entire career. And she is one of our strongest spokespeople on this issue. And I think that, you know, we really saw her come into her own as vice president when this happened and really like take center stage on this as a leader. And that was great to see because that's what people across the country wanted. We wanted somebody who was going to be unapologetic, who's going to make the case that the government should not be involved in these decisions between you and your doctors. And she's doing that so effectively. And on the debate stage tonight, we know that we'll see that again from her.
I kind of love that the organic and immediate pushback to Cat Lady, because I still remember the coming up in the political system, right? I mean, I was the intern who never left DC, and coming up the idea of like, oh my God, you're unmarried as a woman. You can't run for office without, you know, the husband and the 2.2 children and the dog, right? Like that photo that we're so used to seeing. And she's not that photo. And neither are the people that have been feeling, you know, pushed out of the system, the, you know, the non-frequent voters that I feel like are starting to pay attention again. And I think what's like, I mean, I literally am sitting here. I'm like, this is not the kind of person or personality that we have had, or that would actually a focus group would say, this is what Democrats need to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that we need to do away with some of these focus groups and these pollsters who aren't like, I mean, I know I've never gotten polled before. I'm just like, who are we polling?
Neither have I.
I mean, honestly, but
I don't think I have either.
Yeah, that's probably a separate question. But, you know, I think that her relatability has really touched people. People are really starting to see her. And there's a caricature that has been painted of her for years. But now, as she has taken center stage, people have really gotten to know her. There's a huge gap and that needs to be filled as well. Like there's a lot of people who don't really know all about her policies and where she stands. So at the debate tonight, they'll get to hear from her for the first time in many cases. But I think that over the past couple of weeks as well, when we've seen Donald Trump and JD Vance talk about childcare and talk about how, you know, grandma should be able to like help out more, or even though grandma's probably working as well, or giving parents.
Right.
Exactly. Not in this household. She lives 4 states away. So like, I would love grandma to be able to work.
Right. But typical just wild, out of touch nonsense in comparison, again, to exactly your point. Here is Kamala Harris, who is from a working class neighborhood in Oakland, California, who grew up with a single working mother who had to raise her and her two sisters, and her and her sister. And, you know, that's the kind of lived experience that I think resonates with a lot of Americans, right? That's like, just as you said, when people tune in tonight and hear about that, that's their experience. I don't know too many people who grew up getting gifted millions of dollars from their real estate father. I mean, I don't, maybe I know the wrong people, but that's not as common as somebody who was raised by a single parent in a working class neighborhood.
I wonder though, how many times we're going to hear the word working class or regular Americans. And I feel like we should have prepared a bingo card, or at least have some kind of alley, right? Working class, regular American, right? Like these buzzwords for, I don't know, just being normal in American society today.
Yeah, normal people.
Like, just normal. What do you guys think about the weird? Right. Because I grew up with a lot of the things that, you know, we enjoyed, like Harry Potter at a point was weird. Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings was certainly weird when I was reading it. And I was an original reader of Game of Thrones. And this is all like HBO mass marketed stuff now. So I get that weird and nerdy is now common in that way. It's like mass consumption. But there is something to be said for Tim Walz having just called out, just stop being so weird.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's cool weird and there's creepy weird, and I think that we
Mhm.
we're definitely learning the distinction in real time, and we see some of these.
Am I part of the cool weird? Is that?
Oh, 100%, all of us. We're the cool weird. But I mean, that was so masterful of Tim Walz. He really, I think, took away the power from the Republicans. Like, we've been talking about Trump as this big threat to democracy that's going to destroy everything, which is all true to an
Mhm.
extent. But I think also cutting them down to size and saying, like, you're just weird and we don't want you here. I think really has made a difference. And we've seen that Donald Trump has reacted in a way that has put him on defense. Like, he's talking constantly about how he's not weird and he doesn't know what they're talking about. And when you're talking about how you're not weird, that means that you're weird, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's when you know that something's gotten under his skin. Is much like the crowd sizes. I mean, the fact that he's talking so much about crowd sizes makes you know how insecure he is about the size of the Harris Walls rallies that
Yeah,
we've been seeing.
rallies.
The crowd size thing, the insecurities and getting under his skin is actually really what I'm watching for. I'm like, okay, yes, I'm sure there's policy stuff, but so many of us who are watching this debate tonight kind of already know how we feel about the candidates, and some of it is just the showmanship and, you know, kind of erasing the last one from our memories and hoping for something a little bit more dynamic. But he doesn't know what to do with women, let alone Black women. I mean, there was he kind of just hovered over Hillary, creeping over her, and that was the whole thing. Like, is she just going to fry his brain? And that's kind of what I'm hoping to see on the dynamics, right? Like on the interplay. What would just make you? I think you want to start. What would make you just giggle in glee if you giggle?
Big giggler over here. Yes, no, I think seeing him in real time break down would be really something to watch. It's just like a good full circle moment from how, you know, us as a party we're breaking down during the last debate. Now seeing him on stage in front of everybody doing that would be amazing. I think also I would love to see a lot of really hard fact checks from her. I know we can't trust the moderators to do that. So I would love to see her really come back with like really hard, like, that's not true, here's the truth. And really, but also not spiraling down into his depths of whatever nonsense he throws out, because we know he's going to just sort of like hitting things at the wall and really just taking us on a journey that we don't know where we're going. So I really want her to like be very direct, straightforward, fact check, and just stand in her power, because this is historic, and you know we're looking forward to seeing what happens tonight.
Dave, the fact check thing is really interesting because you know, we've all watched and done coverage and have had to in real time, just even on one topic, try to get information out and
Right.
use the right words. And it's so hard to do when somebody is spitting out word salad, right? And that's the problem. It's not one topic. Okay, you can focus on that. It'll start here and end up in China or North Korea when you're talking women's bodies. So what is, like, how would you craft that? Or how do you try to prepare somebody on a, not even debate stage, just a regular schmegular conversation to, you know, to get back to not weird?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same way that you get to Carnegie Hall. Practice, practice, practice. Like the vice president is probably somebody who prepares as much as anybody I've ever been around in my life. And in part, that's how you know that she is a prosecutor. And I think that background serves her extraordinarily well. There's lots of crosstalk in court cases. There's lots of times where, you know, the other opposing counsel is trying to talk over you or trying to confuse a witness or whatever may be the case. And the vice president has a lot of experience. She had experience, as we saw in the Kavanaugh hearing in the Senate, of facing a combative witness who didn't want to agree with her. And yet she nailed him to the floor. And she came back again and again to make the points that she wanted to make. And I think that that's what I would expect to see here. She's been going through many days of debate prep with people playing Donald Trump and trying to simulate what it will be like tonight to have that. And she's ready for it, I would imagine.
This is where the gender and the racial dynamics come into play. And I hope we're in a better place now than we were, you know, 8 years ago. But it's not easy. Yes, it's a double-edged sword, right? You know, Hillary had Trump looming over her, and she got criticized for not calling him out for being a creep. But then also, she's grown up knowing that you can't always directly confront men without seeming like you're being witchy. So, I mean, I think our generation, we're doing better about that. And we just, you know, aren't trying to necessarily hold up all of these expectations about how everybody wants us to be. And that's, living on your own. But she's running for public office. She needs people to approve of her and like her and willing to sign that check. So, and I mean, I'd love another woman's perspective on just what, like, are we going to like something and other people are going to dislike the same thing?
Yeah, and I mean that's a good point. I think to your point about our generation and the ones Gen Zers and people who they've grown up their whole lives with Donald Trump being this like this political figure versus like a celebrity. Like I think that for a lot of those people, they understand the importance of women confronting men, of truth, of bad behaving men who lie all the time. And I feel like it's really up to us to continue to motivate those folks and make sure that they understand that they have a stake in this election, that this is important for them to show up and that they really can be the deciding vote in many of these states. And so I really do hope that we are able that they're able to like see what happens on the station night for what it is and really applaud her for when she does take the chance to stand up to bullying. Because I mean, we saw it in the last cycle when she was talking to when she did her debate with Mike Pence, the Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking, like that went viral. Like I think people really do want to see the types of moments from her, and really she really stands out when she does that and owns it.
Dave, that whole like those moments where that just really capture a personality and that personality expressing really how we're sitting at home and how we would be reacting, right? As opposed to in your head, what is the right thing to do, robot, that authenticity. And you can't necessarily prepare that though, can you, with a candidate?
No, look, to your point, like authentic is authentic and people can tell if you're being authentic or not. And fortunately for the vice president and for those of us who want a democracy to continue to exist after November, January, Kamala Harris is authentically a normal person who reacts in ways that, again, to the point about her saying to Vice President Pence, she didn't, she delivered, as you'll remember, she delivered that line with a smile. She just said, Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. And that was all she had to say. And that immediately it went viral. And it also stopped him from speaking over her because it made him seem small. And it made him seem like he was trying to do exactly what he was trying to do, which was sort of bully her. And here they are right now.
There's the handshake.
There's a handshake. Very, very presidential.
There was one.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country.
No surprise
Vice
there.
President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
She's ready for this question.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing
Laser
tariffs on other
focused, that
countries.
is
Other
her
countries
answer.
are going to finally,
Laser
after
focused on families.
75
doesn't-
years,
but
pay
he
us
doesn't
back
have
for
anything
all that we've done for the world. And the
Immediately,
tariff
he
will
has
be
to get
substantial in some cases. I took
Yep.
in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do.
China tariffs
They're
has to
taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation.
Yeah, I mean,
Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have
listen
inflation
to all
like
this
very few people
gobbledygook that
have
he's.
ever seen
Her
before.
response was so
Probably
clear.
the
It was
worst in
about
our
families.
nation's
It was
history.
about cribs,
We
car
were at
seats, mortgages.
21%, but that's being
His
generous
is
because
all
many
of this
things are
nonsense
50,
about
60,
tariffs in
70,
China.
80% higher than they were just a few years
Okay.
ago. This
Okay.
has been a
Smile.
disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental
Got it.
institutions
Immediate
and
switch.
insane
Immediate
asylums.
switch from the
And they're
economy.
coming
So
in and
she
they're
just
taking
from proactive
jobs that are occupied
to
right now by African
his
Americans
bad
and
policy.
Hispanics,
He goes
and also
a bunch of
unions.
things
Unions
that
are
are
going to be
wrong
affected very
now.
soon. And you
He's
see what's
scared- he's
happening. You
scared
see
of
what's happening with towns throughout
south
the
of the border.
United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado.
If you
They
and
are
I were in the
taking
spin
over the
room, we would
towns.
be
They're
screaming,
taking over
message
buildings.
discipline,
They're
message
going in
discipline. I mean, this is
violently.
completely
These are
off
the
topic.
people
Also,
that
don't
she
mention
and
Aurora,
Biden
Colorado,
led
unless you
into
want
our
to talk
country,
about gun violence.
and they're destroying our
Totally.
country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast.
The question was,
I
do you
created
believe
one of the
Americans are
greatest
better off
economies
economically
in
than
the
4 years
history of
ago?
our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Correct.
Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald
Correct.
Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
He
And
created
what
Bang,
we have
bang,
done
bang.
is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook.
Same old tired
A bunch of
playbook. There you go.
lies, grievances,
look,
and
here's-
name calling.
look
What
at
you're going to hear tonight
this
is a
is
detailed
so-
and dangerous plan called Project 2025
I mean,
that the
he's
former president intends on implementing if he were
I-
elected again.
very
I
interesting.
believe very strongly that the American
Somebody
people want
face-
a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to
She's
be a
just ready
president
with
for
all of these
Americans.
answers. She knew this
President Trump
question
will
was
give you a
coming.
minute to
She knew what he was going to
Number
say
one,
in
I have nothing
response,
to do,
and
as
then
you
she
know,
decided
and
what
she
to say
knows
in
better than
response.
anyone. I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of
He
people
doth
that got
protest too
together. They
much.
came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died. Has there been anything like it? We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was
I just-
higher than it was
Stop,
before the
stop.
pandemic came in.
Remember
Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
being
We
a
made
phenomenal-
ventilators for the entire world. We got
It was
gowns, we got
insane.
masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things,
This
but
is
not
the
enough
problem.
credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs
People
they got
aren't
were bounce back jobs. These were
what it really was
jobs
like.
bounced
Oh,
back,
yeah.
and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit.
People that
But
called
I was the one
had
that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris.
Donald Trump was a centrist.
So
Yeah, ridiculous.
Donald Trump has no plan for you.
Did we just?
And when you look at his
deep
economic
or
plan,
you-
it's all about tax breaks
No,
for the
it's
richest people.
Ridiculous.
I
Can-
am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy.
Yeah,
And
see,
the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of
Right.
America.
And here's the vice
What
president
Goldman Sachs
refocusing on the
says
question.
Is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan
Where he went.
would actually explode the deficit.
Right.
16
Mhm.
Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would
Okay.
invite a
I want
recession.
to take a
You
marker
just have to look
and draw
at
the
where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump
Right, like-
actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a
There you go.
simple- I gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and
Yeah.
many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a
the
country.
problem,
It's going to make
He's
people want to be able to
a
go
laureate.
and work and
can't rattle off every,
create jobs and create a lot
No.
of
but he
good,
also then said, oh,
solid
they all
money
think
for our
talking like
country.
those
And just to
people,
finish
those
off,
names kind of all comes out in the
she
wash.
doesn't have a plan.
Yeah,
She
but
copied
listen to how
Biden's
clear
plan,
she, I mean,
and
as we
it's
saw,
like
he started
4
talking about rural
sentences,
Colorado
like
and
run,
people
spot,
coming out
run.
of prisons into
4 sentences
America
that
when
are
asked
just,
what he would
oh,
do for
we'll
people
try
in
and
the
lower
economy.
taxes.
She was talking
She
about
doesn't have a
cribs
plan.
and
Take
car
a look at her
seats.
plan. She doesn't have a
I
plan.
think that that's a good contrast.
Mr. President,
There's,
I do want to
there's
drill
Trump
down on something
fanatics
you
who are going to
both brought
love him no
up.
matter what
The
he
Vice
says.
President brought
But
up
for the people in
your
the middle,
tariffs. You responded, and
I
let's
have
drill
to
down on
imagine
this
that hers
because
was a
your
much more
plan is
successful
what
answer
she
right there.
calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many
How many times has
economists
the
say
word
that
tariffs been
tariffs at that
said
level
so far?
costs are then passed on to the consumer.
Share,
Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical
but
family nearly $4,000 a
not
year.
the
Do you
policy
believe
that-
Americans can afford higher
Yeah.
prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's
Make
going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the
Yeah.
countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration.
It's also
We
because
are going to take in
adjusted to those
billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars.
also
I
start
had no inflation, virtually no inflation.
and
They
in-
had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because
Right.
I've never seen a worse period of
I'll be
time.
quiet.
People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice
I'm
President
sure
Harris,
that's not
I do wanna
true.
Ask for your response, and you heard what
Make
the
up-
president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He
Boom, she was ready
invited
for this
trade
one too.
wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China
Yes,
help
boom,
them
Chips and Science Act.
improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which
Who's
means
tougher on this
focusing
stage right
on
now?
the
Who's tougher
details of
about
what that
standing
requires,
up for America?
focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like
Not true
they
at
have.
all,
I don't say her
actually.
because she has no policy. Everything that she
Literally-
believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out
to
the window.
not
She's
only
going to
the
my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat.
entire
She's gone to my philosophy, but
Yeah.
if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist.
I love the
professor in
contrast there.
economics.
Her laugh when he
Taught
says
her well.
Marxist. Oh,
When you
yes,
look at
so
what
good.
she's done
Oh,
to our
just
country,
hand
and when
on
you
the
look at
chin,
these
like, oh, really?
millions and millions
So
of
good.
people that are pouring into our country
That's a
monthly,
meme. Already,
where
that's a
it's, I
meme.
believe 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump.
American carnage.
I want to turn to the issue
Right.
of
Oh,
abortion.
this
President
really
Trump, you've often
are
touted that you were able
views
to
of
kill
things.
Roe v.
It's,
Wade
as
last
George
year.
W.
You
Bush
said
said,
that
Roe
you
that's
v.
were
some
Wade.
weird
proud to
stuff.
be the most pro-life president in American history.
Oh, here we
Then
go.
last
Here's the
month, you
reproductive
said
rights
that your
question.
administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised
Second
many
question of the debate.
with regard
That's
to your 6-week
I
abortion
love
ban,
that.
because you
And I
initially
love
had said that it was too short. And you
this
said,
is what
quote,
you
I'm
said,
going to be
guy.
voting that we
What
need
do you
more
really
than
think?
6 weeks. But
correct.
then the
Correct.
very next day, you
Fact checking
reversed course and
sent him
said you would
with,
vote to
"This
support
is
the
who you
6-week
are."
Watch,
ban.
I'm sure he'll try to
Vice
distance
President
himself
Harris
from
says that
everything
women
he's ever
shouldn't
said right
trust you
now,
on the
and
issue
watch the vice
of
president just going
abortion
to come back
because
on him
you've
like a ton of
changed your
bricks.
position so many times.
Give another,
And
like,
therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor
Again, a
of West
lie.
Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words,
Oh,
we'll
come
execute
on.
the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates.
No,
Because they're
baby.
radical. The
have been
Democrats are
executed
radical in
after
that.
birth.
It's ridiculous.
I will
Vice
speak.
presidential
No
pick, which I
babies
think
have
was a
been
horrible
executed
pick, by the way,
after
for our
birth.
country,
That does
because
not
he is
happen in
really out of
America.
it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion,
Montana,
because the baby is
Not
born,
Kentucky,
is
true.
okay.
Montana,
And that's
Kentucky,
with me.
Michigan,
That's
Vermont.
the vote.
I'm just naming
But
some
what I did
states
is
that voted
something
over
for
Kansas that voted
52 years, they've
overwhelmingly
been trying to
for
get Roe
to
v.
uphold
Wade
reproductive freedom.
into the
This is a
states.
losing issue for him.
And
This is a
through
losing
the
issue.
I mean,
Not
what
to mention that he's
genius
wrong
and
and
heart and
ridiculously
very
so.
thing
of
when
6
people
Supreme
are
Court
living
justices,
right now.
Correct.
we were able
Correct.
to do
This
that.
is
Now, I believe
families
in
are
the
too
exceptions
smart.
Like
for
6
rape,
weeks.
incest, and life of the
Like
mother.
6
I
weeks. You
believe
don't know if you're
strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do.
Doesn't matter what happens
Exceptions,
to you
very
after that.
important.
No,
But we were able to get it, and now states are
overwhelmingly the
voting
public
on it.
disagrees
And
with
for
this
the
nonsense,
first
by the
time,
way.
They
you're going to see,
always
look,
happen.
this is
Now
an
the
issue
stories
that's
are
torn
coming
our
out
country
like that.
apart
You have a
for
dead baby
52 years.
Doctor calling
Yeah.
Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every
because they're
Republican,
not sure if they're
liberal,
gonna get
conservative,
arrested.
they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what
a
happened.
different-
Now,
why women should
Ohio,
on the
the
issue of
vote was
abortion.
somewhat liberal.
They shouldn't.
Kansas,
Yeah.
the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual
Yeah,
state
but-
is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did.
Oh,
Oh,
great
it's not tied up in
service
the
doing
right.
it.
You,
Rights
took-
on
you
it.
took away a
And the
right, a
Supreme
basic
Court had
fundamental
great
freedom.
courage in doing
But
it.
he's going
And I give
states'
tremendous
rights on
credit
this.
to those
Oh,
6
of course he is.
justices.
Of course
But
he
he's
is.
There is no
states'
state in this
rights,
country
and
where it is
it's
legal to
state-
kill a
this is-
baby
That's
after
what
it's
people are
born.
upset about.
Madam
They
Vice
want
President, I want
a
to get your
federal
response
protection.
to
Right.
President
They
Trump.
don't
Well,
want
as I
states
said, you're going to hear a
decide
bunch of
what
lies,
healthcare
and that's not
medicine is
actually a
acceptable.
surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it
Yeah.
criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and
So you're gonna talk
incest,
about
which
my friend Amanda?
understand what that means.
I
A
don't know, we'll see.
survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to
That's
their
immoral.
body next. That is immoral.
It's
And
almost like
one
you've
does
written
not
that
have to
line for her
abandon
before.
their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied
Turned away.
care in an emergency room because the healthcare
That's Amanda
providers
from
are
Texas,
afraid
Amanda
they might go to
Zarowski.
jail,
People
and she's
watching,
bleeding
Google
out
her.
in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that.
That's
Her
Anya in
husband didn't want
Florida.
that.
Google it.
A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But
Cut, print, that's an
understand,
ad.
if Donald Trump were to be reelected,
That's the contrast right
he
there.
will sign a
People-
national abortion ban. Understand, in his
That
Project
way,
2025, there would be a national
healthcare,
abortion, a
the
monitor that
president-
would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you,
Boom.
Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else. And
Saying
every
it doesn't
legal
make it so.
scholar
I hear-
wanted it to be
What?
brought back into
Yeah.
the states. And the
Every-
states
He says
are
this all the
voting.
time.
And it may
Doesn't
take a
matter how
little
wrong it
time,
is.
but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart. And they've wanted it
Not until
back
you
in
came
the
along.
States. And I
No.
did something that
Pro-life
nobody thought was
activists
possible.
have
Right.
The
made
states are
this
now
an issue.
voting. What she
80%
says
of
is an
Americans
absolute
have
lie.
consistently
And as far as the
supported a
abortion
woman's
ban,
right to
no,
choose.
I'm not in
Don't
favor of
take
abortion ban,
stacking
but
the
it doesn't
courts
matter
or
because
stacking
this
legislators
issue
by
has now been
pro-life
taken
rights
over by the
Yeah.
states.
what
Would you veto a
Americans
national
want.
abortion ban if it
Well,
came
I
to your
won't
desk?
have to because again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote.
He has
She
no
can't get the vote. She
idea
won't
how
even
far
come
the
close
down
to it. So it's just
No.
talk. You know what
No
it
idea.
reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then
Well, once
her, I
again,
think
he's bringing up
probably her
things that are
boss,
good for the
if you
Democratic
call him a
Party.
boss,
Good
spends
for
all
Kamala
his
Harris.
time on the beach.
Things that
But look,
people wanted
her
more.
boss-
Things that people wanted.
Exactly.
Things
They
that people
wanted
voted for
more.
Joe Biden
Different
to
way.
do.
He went out, got rejected
Really
again
good. You
by
go
the
far
Supreme
enough,
Court.
guy.
So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of
Who
people
lost?
that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, JD Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with JD. In all fairness, JD, and I don't mind
is
if he
the
has
best
a certain
answer.
view, but
Just
I think he was speaking
Throw
for me,
your
but
vice
I
president
really
under the
didn't.
bus.
Under the
Throw him under
bus.
the bus.
Great.
We don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it,
Oh,
just like she
remind me,
couldn't
what
get
happened to
student
his
loans.
last
They
vice
couldn't get student loans. They didn't even
presidential,
come close to getting
What happened
student
to his
loans.
last vice
They
president? How come
taunted
Mike Pence isn't
young
running with him?
people and a lot of other people that had loans.
Question,
They can never get
would
this
you
approved.
sign it or would
So
you
it
not?
doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And
It
we
Vote
was
down
out of
ballot.
and everybody
Congress.
said couldn't be done.
Everybody
And now
watching, vote
you
down
have a
ballot.
vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to
legislatures.
give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and in asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are
Amanda
being
and Josh.
denied
They're right.
IVF treatments.
The
What
guy
is
that Trump
happening
was
in our country?
Anna supporting
Working people,
on his
working women
stop
who are
It's-
working
they're
one
going
or
out
two jobs,
because
who can
why allow
barely
my-
afford
Yeah.
childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it. And what you are putting her through is
See, that's what she's doing.
unconscionable.
never
And the people of America
is
have not, the
personalized
majority of Americans
Yeah.
believe in a woman's
Like
right
you
to make decisions about
story
her own body.
about.
And
She's-
that is why
describing
In
the
every state where this issue has
Yeah.
been on the ballot in red and
he
blue
talks
states both,
rhetoric
the people
and
of
fear.
America have voted for
There's
freedom.
never the personal
President.
Excuse me, I
example
have
of
to
everybody
respond.
he's talked
Another
to,
Exactly.
or even
It's
his
another
own
lie.
experience.
I have been a leader
'Cause he doesn't
on
have it.
IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a
That
leader on it.
Donald.
They know that, and everybody
That's
else knows it.
literally what the
I have
state
been a
did.
leader
They
on
realized their law
fertilization
made no
IVF.
sense.
And the
I
other
Yeah.
thing,
remember this one.
they,
Everyone's like,
you should ask,
are you saying that we can't
will
continue?
she allow abortion
All the
in the
embryos.
8th month,
Totally.
9th month,
Like,
7th
whoa,
month?
whoa, let's double back. Sorry.
Okay, would you
Right?
do
The
Yeah,
that?
whole
but-
idea, they overturned Roe v.
Why don't
Wade.
you answer that
Why
question?
don't you
But
answer
this
the
is-
question with your
Because
Right.
under
veto?
Roe v.
Answer the
Wade,
question
you
with your
could,
veto.
you could do abortions in the 7th month,
Ooh, answer the
8th
question,
month,
she
the
says.
9th
It's not
month,
true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of
Honestly,
Virginia.
the
The
longer
governor of Virginia said, we put the baby
Exactly
aside,
right.
and then we
Stay
determine
on
what we
stay
want
on
to do
this
with the
topic
baby.
as
It is-
long
it is
as
a
possible.
settled
We're going to
issue.
turn now to
minds
immigration
how
and
they
border
feel about it.
security. We know it's an issue that's
And
important to
all he's
Republicans,
doing is
Democrats, voters
riding up
across the board
Correct.
in this country.
people who
Vice
want
President
more
Harris, you were
abortion rights
tasked by
and
President Biden with getting to
disappointing
the
and
root
upsetting
causes of
the pro-choice,
migration
like
from
pro-life
Central
people.
America.
There's
We
no
know
way.
that illegal border crossings reached a
Okay,
record
well, now
high
this is the
in the
one that
Biden
she.
administration.
Yeah,
This
right.
past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the
She's ready for this
administration
question
wait
too.
until
No
6
surprise.
months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the
Truth.
trafficking
Truth.
of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job.
Mm.
It would have allowed us to stem
Right.
the flow
And
of
he
fentanyl coming
single-handedly
into the
destroyed
United
it.
States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know
There
why?
was a
Because he'd prefer to run
I
on a
was there in
problem
Congress at the
instead
time
of fixing
working on
a
it,
problem.
and it was
And
absolutely horrific
understand,
Yep.
this
when
comes
the
at a
Republican
time
majority
where the
tanked
people of
their
our country
own
actually
compromise
need a
because
leader
Trump
who
said
engages in
Correct.
solutions,
on immigration
who
would be
actually addresses the problems at hand. But
The
what
people
we
are
have in
dying
the
as a
former
result.
president is
As
someone
she
who would
rightly
prefer to
pointed
run
out,
on a
fentanyl's
problem
an issue I've
instead
worked a
of
lot
fixing
on
a
in my
problem.
career.
And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch.
okay.
You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills
You called
cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
Okay, so now this
And
is
I
getting
will tell you
under
the one
his
thing you
skin.
will not hear him
Yep.
talk about
Boom.
is you.
Outsize,
You
how
will
much
not hear him talk about
is
your
people
needs, your dreams, and
And I
your
want him to
and your
stay on it.
desires.
No,
And I'll
nobody
tell you,
leaves
I
my
believe
rallies.
you
The biggest
deserve
rallies
we
ever.
have
a
to
president
Take the
who
bait.
actually puts you first. And I pledge
the
to you
bait.
that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to
Let
respond.
me just ask, though, why did you try
See?
to kill
Oh,
that
they
bill,
should
and
have let him go.
successfully so,
Ah.
that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies.
Ah,
She
yes,
said
first to
people
the
start
rallies.
leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So
Oh,
she
yes,
can't
she did.
talk about
Oh,
that. People
God,
don't
see-
leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it
She's
happened
laugh.
3.5 years
I
ago.
just-
And
who
what's
likes
going
hearing
on
that?
here, you're going to end
We're
up
a
in World
failing
War
nation?
III,
I
just to go into
have
another
a hard time
subject.
believing that that's
What
effective.
they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country,
Oh,
and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want
Aurora,
to talk about it because they're
Spring.
so embarrassed by it. In Springfield,
Another thing that
they're
Donald
eating the dogs.
I actually think is
They
really
came in, they're
idea.
eating the cats. They're
all
eating.
these towns,
They're
all
eating the
people,
pets
right,
of the
all these
people that
there's
live
people
there.
who believe
And
New
this is
York
what's
City is on
happening
fire
in our
all the time,
country. And it's a
right?
shame. As far as
That every town
rallies are concerned, as far
overrun
as the
by
reason they go
war.
is they like what I say. They
I
want
get
to
it. She
bring our
laughs.
country
It's
back.
so
They want to
absurd,
make
but
America
people
great
believe
again. It's a
this.
very
They
simple
keep
phrase. Make
this.
America great again.
His
She's
people will
destroying
believe it,
this
but I
country.
think,
And if
you
she
know,
becomes
there were
president, this country
his
doesn't have a
dedicated
chance
supporters in
of
2020 who
success.
believed
Not
it,
only
but
success,
I don't
will
think
end
you
up
get.
being
It's tough to win
Venezuela on
a general
steroids.
election.
I just
based
want
on
to
that.
clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city
Fact
manager
checking.
there. He told us there have been
Wow.
no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this.
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
People
a,
are
People on television
a
say
clar-
my dog was taken and
Haitians eating
used for food.
animals.
So
pet
maybe
story.
he
Like,
said that, and maybe that's a
this is what
good
we're
thing to say for a city
talking-
manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people are
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Talk more about dogs
Again,
getting
Springfield
eaten.
City
Please-
manager
please
says
talk
there's
more
no
about the
evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond
No,
to the
this
rest
is
of
the
what you
city
heard.
manager.
Look at how
Talk
good
about
her response is going to
extreme.
be here.
You know,
Okay.
this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney,
Cheney,
and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
His
I'm
former
all
national
his own
security
people call
advisor
him
has said he
national
is dangerous and unfit.
But see what she did there? She
His
took
former
that crazy
Secretary
about
of Defense has
Correct.
said the nation, the republic would
Let it
never
lie.
following
survive
him down the rabbit hole.
another
And we're cracking
Trump
jokes about it.
term.
He took it and went to
And when we
okay,
listen
Yep.
to
security.
this
You want
kind
to
of
talk about
rhetoric,
security?
when the
You
issues
are the
that
number
affect the
one
American people
country.
are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank you. Because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad
Fire
job. I
people
fired them. They
is
never
not the
fired one
bragging point
person.
he thinks
They
it is
didn't fire
when
anybody
layoffs
having
are
to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the
workforce
13 people whose
It's-
right?
whose
People
were
being
just
laid off
killed
and fired.
viciously and
People-
violently killed. And I got to know the
Ridiculous.
parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top
Oh, good. They
people,
should have
because that
fired
was
all
one
the
of the most
generals. Yeah.
incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire them.
And then
You
why
take
did
a
you
guy
hire
like
them in the first
Esper, He was
place?
no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can
These
write
are all
books. With
people who
nobody
did
else can they?
by the way,
But
for
they
multiple
have done
presidents,
such a poor
Republican-
job, and they never fire anybody.
Nobody else
Look at
had-
the economy. Look,
Jeez.
look at the
Donald Trump.
inflation. They
You know,
didn't fire
that's
any of
interesting,
their
Nayyera.
economists. They have the
Who
same
hired
people.
all of these
That's
people
a
to work
good
for him
way
that he had to
not
fire
have
because they
books
were
written
such
about
dum
you.
dums?
But just to
Jeez.
finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any sitting president in history by
Yeah,
far.
you know who got more? Joe Biden and Kamala
Let me
Harris.
continue on immigration.
Literally,
This is what you
'cause
wanted
they
to
won
talk
the
about earlier.
election.
So let's get back to your deportation
Wait.
proposal.
What
that
is
the
that?
vice
Is
president
that
has
is that a
reacted
big
to as well.
lie? Kind of
President
is that
Trump,
red
you
meat?
I
called
think
this
it's
the
a wink.
largest
I
domestic
think it's a wink
deportation
at the big
operation in the
lie.
history of our
Is that
country.
what
You
that
say
is?
you would use the
People saying,
National
"I
Guard. You
won."
say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the
U.S.
U.S.
local
military.
police.
You
Denial
also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe
I'm
that number
so glad they're
is much
asking for
higher.
practicality.
Take us through
Oh,
this.
yeah.
What does this
Are you gonna
look like?
fly
Will
them
authorities be
somewhere?
going
What
door to
if-
door in this country?
What if the other countries don't
It
want
is
them?
much higher because of them. They
Which,
allowed
by the way,
criminals,
I had
many,
to
many
work on some of
millions of
the common
criminals.
administration
They allowed
of how do you
terrorists. They
actually
allowed
go back who want
common
to go
street
back, or like,
criminals. They
hey,
allowed people to come in, drug
Listen, I-
dealers to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her
Wow.
to put
Okay.
into our country.
I don't know why
And
he's going after
this
the
will be
Venezuela.
one of the
All
greatest
them
Yeah,
mistakes
the
in
ones
history.
that-
for
Crime
them
in
to allow-
Venezuela has
and
gone
I think
down.
they
That is
probably
the
did it 'cause
talking
they think
point.
they're going to get votes, but it's
Bringing
not worth it
Venezuela
because they're destroying the
social
fabric of our country by what they've done.
Yeah, well,
There's
praising
never been
dictators is
anything done like this.
praising
at all.
dictators
They've
is Donald Trump's
destroyed the
favorite
fabric
pastime.
of our country.
And Republicans are
Millions of
supporting that.
people
Why
live
is he
in,
doubting
and
on
all
that?
over the world. Crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their
No, it's
fraudulent
not.
statements that they
That's
made.
just not true at
Crime
all.
in
It
this country is
was higher
through the
under
roof.
him.
And we have a
If
new
you
form
look
of
at
crime. It's
the
called
top
migrant
10
crime. And it's
largest
happening at levels
their
that nobody
police
thought
departments
possible.
have
President
said,
Trump, as you know,
for
the
the last 2
FBI
years,
says
crime is down.
overall violent
Murder's
crime
down
is
and
actually
crime's
coming
down.
down in this
That is
country.
police
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris, I'll
FBI
let you-
David,
they were
thank
defrauding
you.
statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include
It
the
includes
cities
the
with the worst
top-
crime.
biggest
It was
city
a
in the country.
fraud, just like their number of
Oh, it was a fraud. Well,
818,000
well,
jobs
Eric,
that
come
they
on.
said they created
Everything's a
turned out to
fraud
be
if
a fraud.
it's
President
bad for
Trump,
him.
thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think
We
this
should
is
say it
so
again.
rich
Police's
coming
own
from
data.
someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference,
Sexual
has been
violence.
found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
Convicted
And
criminal.
let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page
Forward versus
on
back.
this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice
Yeah,
President Harris.
same old tired playbook. Such
Excuse
a
me.
smart response.
Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most
You
of them,
see,
and I
Uh-huh.
will win the rest on appeal.
That
And you saw
Trump,
that with the decision that came
making
down just
us
recently from the
versus
Supreme
them.
Court.
Yeah.
I'm winning most of them.
Mike,
But those are
them,
cases, it's called
those
weaponization.
people,
Yeah.
Never happened in this
them
country.
being that
They
black,
weaponized the
brown,
Justice
biracial
Department.
woman,
Every
Correct.
one of
migrants,
those
like,
cases was involved with the
that's not an
DOJ
accident.
from
He's
Atlanta
not
and
using their
Farney
name
Willis
at all. He's not
to,
using
to
Biden
the
or Harris. He's saying
Attorney
them,
General
those
of New
people.
York and the
Those,
DA
yeah.
of New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents
Joe
case?
Biden's not
They
the
said,
president.
oh, that's the toughest
Right.
of them all.
Joe,
A
right.
complete and
Well,
total
Number two,
victory. 2
Same
months
old
ago,
tired
it was
One
playbook.
count
He's
thrown
still
out.
talking about Joe
It's
Biden.
Before
weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're
President Trump-
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the
Be a
United States.
dictator
That
on
he
day
would
one.
weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know JD Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice
This is
President
a
Harris,
bit
thank you.
fair for
Lindsay?
Kamala
Vice
Harris.
President Harris, in your
Fear.
last run for president,
Right?
Yeah.
Trump uses fear at all.
This is the one that
Totally.
weaponized, not me. She weaponized and
Trump and
probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy.
Seriously.
I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a
President
fake Russia
We
investigation
do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice
Last one.
President Harris, in your last run for president,
you
you
know,
said
8
you wanted
years
to
ago.
ban fracking.
Yeah.
Prosecution
Now
was
you
8
don't.
years
You
ago.
wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you
Let's
don't.
talk about gun
You
violence,
supported
another
decriminalizing border
overwhelmingly
crossings.
positive
Now
issue
you're taking a harder line. I know you
for
say that
Kamala
your
Harris.
values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil.
Listen, it's
As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew
Yeah.
up a middle-class kid,
Policy.
raised by a hardworking mother
that was a very
who
clear
worked and saved
Yeah.
and was able
that
to buy
points
our
to her
first home when I
record
was a teenager.
whatever, you know,
The
position.
values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a
Was-
value that I bring to my
Love it.
work to say we are going to work
What,
with the
you haven't
private
filed
sector
bankruptcy
and
6
home
times?
builders to
You didn't get
increase
400 million?
3 million homes,
I would not
increase
yeah,
by 3
and-
million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable.
That's an unfair
My work
chyron that
that is
ABC
about
News is running
protecting
right now.
Social Security and Medicare.
Why have
is
so many
based
of
on
Kamala Harris's
longstanding work
policy
that I have
positions
done,
changed? It's
protecting seniors from
implying that they
scams.
have, which is
My
not accurate.
Values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name calling.
So
The true measure of the leader
we're like,
is
oh,
the leader who
Trump
actually understands
policy
the strength is not in beating people down,
stay
it's
on
in lifting people up.
online.
I
you know,
intend to
not
be
veer off
that
course,
president.
but
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response.
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was
Right.
a
Of the
Brooklyn builder,
president.
Brooklyn Queens,
that's what she's
and a
talking
great
about.
father, and I learned a lot from him,
about
but I was given a fraction of that, a
policy.
tiny fraction,
It's
and I
perfect.
built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police.
Ideas
In
that
Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute,
and
I'm
Donald
talking now.
consistent,
mind,
right?
please.
Like that's what he's
Right.
on.
The guy
Does
who,
that sound
right, the
familiar?
guy who was a Democrat who donated to her.
She went out,
Right. So
she
right.
went out in
What is he trying to do
Minnesota
here?
and wanted to
Increase
let criminals
I hope she
that
mentions
killed
that in her
people,
rebuttal.
that burned down
Obviously,
Minneapolis.
she
went out
wasn't
and
so
raised
different that
money
he
to
didn't
get 'em
want
out
to
of
donate to
jail.
her.
She
Oh,
did
my
things that
goodness.
nobody would ever think
Yeah,
of.
they did,
Now
right?
she wants to
Burning
do
cities, Black Lives
transgender
Matter.
operations on
Not
illegal
back-
aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so
It
important,
really
in my opinion.
Ignore
So
everybody else.
I got the oil business
Totally
going like
trust
nobody
me.
has ever done before.
That's what
They
it is.
took, when they took over,
Don't believe your
they got
lying
rid of it,
eyes.
started
Don't believe
getting rid of it,
anybody but me.
and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up
Like,
to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400,
President
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues that
things
we
for the
have to get
environment.
to.
This
We're
year.
out of
As opposed to
Thank you.
putting coal
Lindsay, thank you.
in our
Election
lungs and in the
conspiracy
atmosphere.
theories. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of
Trump
crisis.
has
Mr.
declined
President, on
multiple
January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an
On the
out-of-control
other
police
side,
officer.
first of
that should
all,
have
multiple
never,
members of the
ever
Capitol Police
shot
Force
her.
died.
So wait,
It's a
so
disgrace. But we didn't do
Would have
this
been a
group of people
better
that have been
people were
treated
killed?
so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed
What
to pour in?
about
She was the border czar. Remember that. She was
Which
the border czar.
your
She doesn't want to be
supporters
called the border czar
were
because she's embarrassed by the
Well,
border. In
he's-
fact, she said at the beginning,
saying
"Oh, I'm surprised you're not
your
talking
vice
about the border yet."
president.
That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? What are they going to be prosecuted?
This is
When
the
are
one
these
out, like,
people from countries
one
all
out.
over the world, not just South America?
You can tell
They're coming in
they're
from
under his
all
skin now.
over
Hacking
He's
the
mad.
world,
He's
David.
yelling.
All over the world,
fine.
and crime rates are down
Not
all
talk
over the
about
world
that.
because of it.
But let
What
me just
one
about
of those,
the
David,
border?
one of those people are going to be prosecuted. One of the people that burned down Minneapolis is going to be prosecuted. Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle.
Fine.
When are those people going to be
Jamal.
prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000
It
National
was
Guard
done
or
by your
soldiers.
supporters. Oh, this
They
is
rejected
completely
me. Nancy
not-
Pelosi
ridiculous.
rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her
Oh,
daughter
gosh,
has a
I
tape
just
of
hope
her
that-
saying
that-
she is fully
His own
responsible for what
secretary
happened. They
acting
want to get rid of that tape.
time, which
It
is
would have
responsible
never
for
happened
the
if
National
Nancy Pelosi and the mayor
refused
of Washington
to
did their
sign
jobs. I wasn't
allow
responsible
them
for security.
gather.
Nancy
Maryland and
Pelosi was
Virginia
responsible.
got
She
there
didn't do her job.
The
before
question
the
was
DC
about you
National
as
Guard
president, not about
because
former Speaker Pelosi. But I do
because
want Vice
the
President
Trump
Harris to
administration wouldn't
respond.
sign off. You
I
know where
was
else
at
you
the
can find all
Capitol
this
on January
information?
6th.
In the
I
impeachment
was
hearing.
the vice president-elect.
Here
I
you
was
go.
also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the
She was.
president of the United States incited a violent mob
Mhm.
to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville,
Yeah.
where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say?
Everyone just
There were
forget.
fine people on each side.
Very fine
Let's
people.
remember
Very fine
that
people on both
when it
sides.
came to
Very
the
fine
Proud Boys, a
Nazis.
militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go
Yeah.
back.
So
Let's
good.
chart a
She was ready
course
for that.
for the
So good.
future
Such a good
and
response to
not
his
go
just
backwards to
To
constant,
not go
past.
backwards.
Let me just follow up here.
crazy, out of bounds
was
behavior
a
and
different
comments.
term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was.
What?
Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people.
All the Fox
they
News
covered it.
hosts
If
who,
they go
who
an
are on your
extra
payroll,
sentence, they will
basically?
see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper.
But just
They
talk to the
still
people
bring it
on
up,
my
just like
campaign
they bring
payroll. They'll tell you a
2025
different
up.
story.
They
At this
bring all of
point,
this stuff
he's
up.
trying to
I
hold
ask
on
you
to
this. You
the
talk
faith
about
and
the
not
Capitol.
lose anybody from
Why
there
are we allowing
because
these
nothing
millions of people to
nothing
come
that
through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very
who is
proud to do it. I would say we would both
excited.
leave this debate
That's
right
wild.
now. I'd like
He's
to
not
see her
reading
go
with
down
with
to
any
Washington, D.C.
so far,
during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go
especially
down to, because she's been so bad. It's so
from
ridiculous.
8 years ago.
Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The president of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the
All right.
afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people,
I wanna-
unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue, both of you,
J6.
because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide.
There you go. Good
In the
reframe.
past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in
No, I
2020?
don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically. You know that.
Good. Keep
It was
saying
said, oh,
it.
we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it.
Good.
And they should have sent it
Spew
back
the
to the
crazy.
legislatures for approval. I
Spew
got
the
almost
nonsense. Spew the
75 million votes, the
conspiracies.
most
Let people
votes
see
any
who you
sitting
are.
president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls. And we have to have it.
That
We have to
laughter
have
that I'm seeing
borders,
from the guest
and
who
we have
just
to have
joined
good
us is
elections.
exactly
Our
the right
elections
response
are
here.
bad.
All you can
And
do
a
is
lot of
laugh.
these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak
Did you
English.
know
They
that,
don't even know
Professor?
what
Did you know
country they're
that
in practically. And these people are trying to
apparently
get them to vote. And
he
that's
still
why
wants to
they're
relitigate
allowing
4
them to
years
come
ago?
into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm. Lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just
He's
point
so
out here as
triggered.
clarification,
He's
and
so
you know this,
triggered.
you and your allies, 60
He
cases
is losing
in front of
his
many
shit
judges,
in
many
its
of them
The
blood.
judge
Republican,
looked at it.
Right
and
at
said
this
there
They
was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing.
Well, he had standing
That's
in
how
his
we
criminal
lost.
cases when he
If
was
you look
convicted
at
of
the
all those
facts, and I'd
felonies. So
love
that's
to
a
have you
shame
do
for
a
him.
special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania.
All right,
and
Professor,
I'll
I'll
show-
let you guys
We
talk.
have
I'll be
so many
back.
facts and statistics. But
Bye,
you know what?
everyone.
That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he
is
didn't say
barely
that he lost by a
controlling
whisker,
himself.
so he still believes
Barely.
he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult
I
time
was
processing
waiting
that.
for her to use the fire.
But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States. And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases
He is
you
about
have
right here, right now,
lost
right here.
because you
Right here.
did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to
Ooh.
respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world
He
leaders.
about to jump on the other
Viktor
side.
Orban,
Watch.
one of the most respected men. They call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime
That's not what a
Minister of
strongman
Hungary.
is.
They
That's not what
said,
a
why
strongman
is the whole world blowing up? 3
Viktor
years ago,
Orban.
it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him.
He is
Look at what's going on with North Korea, by
He's
the way.
losing his
He
shit
said
so bad.
Russia was afraid of him.
right?
I ended the Nord Stream 2
about
pipeline,
democracy
and
and
Biden put
democracy
it back on day one,
wants
but
to
he
be
ended the XL
He
pipeline.
wants to be an
The
autocrat.
XL
and dictator.
Of
pipeline
course he does.
in our country.
He's
He
getting
ended
North
that,
Russia,
but he let the
Russia,
Russians build a
all his
pipeline
friends.
going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline
What are
in the
we-
world.
Nobody's
Look,
talking about a fucking pipeline.
Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you
It's
talk about
on
a threat
now.
to
It's
democracy.
on now.
He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her.
Oh, no,
But
he,
got
you know what?
14
He done
million
fucked
votes.
up.
They
He
threw
is-
him out.
Oh, my
She got
God.
0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm okay
President,
with it
Mr.
because
President, your
Oh,
time
I
is
think
up.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
Good
He
job,
had
Bob.
lost
Thank
his
you.
shit
Turning now
totally.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are
And it's
still
just
being held, Americans
ignored
among
everything
them.
he just
Vice
did.
President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself.
You
But
know what?
you
No,
added,
she didn't need
quote,
to answer
it
that.
matters
She didn't need to
how,
answer that shit.
saying
Just let him
international
talk.
humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis, many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so, absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately. And the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must
It's one
chart a course for a two-state
does.
solution. And
Yeah.
in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the
He don't even know what he's gonna
Palestinians
say next.
have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
What she's always said.
President Trump, how would
Yeah.
you negotiate with
Very consistent. This
Netanyahu
is a consistent
and
answer.
also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing
It's not
of
gonna
more
please
innocent
everybody.
civilians in Gaza?
No,
If I
but
were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way.
No,
for
he
4
would have
years,
ran through Ukraine like
gone into Ukraine and killed Millions of people when you
what
add it up. Far
made
worse than people
feel
understand what's going on over there.
people on the
But when
border
she mentions about
leading
Israel, all of a
to,
sudden, she hates Israel.
you know,
She wouldn't even meet
everything
with
happened.
Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a
Oh, my
sorority
stream
party
is
of
bad.
hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She
Okay.
hates Israel. If
Did you
she's
try
president,
to,
I
he just,
believe that
Oh,
Israel
he
would
just
not
went after the
exist
God
within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good
he
at
just tried to
predictions, and I
shade her
hope I'm wrong
sorority.
about that one.
Oh, you know
She
they coming
hates
for his
Israel.
ass now.
At the same time,
You
in
just
her own
shaded it. They
way,
go ski
she
wee
hates
all
the
over your
Arab
butt.
population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald
He
Trump.
went after the
Now
sorority.
Iran has
Oh my God.
$300 billion because they
I
took
gotta
off
see the
all the
transcript of this
sanctions that I had.
shit. This
Iran
is
had no
ridiculous.
money for
He is
Hamas
everywhere.
or Hezbollah or any of the
And he
28
can't get it
different
right. He cannot get it right.
spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror.
God.
They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around.
All the sanctions on
Look
them.
at what's
The
happening
people of
with
Iran
the
are
Houthis
suffering.
and Yemen.
I know.
Look at
They're
what's
suffering.
going on in the
He
Middle
doesn't even
East.
want to talk about it.
This would have never happened.
He don't know what's going
I
on
will
over
get
there.
that settled. And
He barely knows
fast
what's going on over
get
here.
the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice
Okay,
President
done
Harris.
even before he become a president.
All right, so he
That's
needs to go over there to talk to
absolutely
Bibi
not
right
true.
now.
I have
Make that,
my entire career
he
and
needs to go
life
talk to Netanyahu
supported
right now.
Israel and the Israeli
Yeah.
people. He knows that. He's
Then
trying
finish it.
to again divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is
Himself
well
30
known
seconds
that
ago.
he said
I
of
know, right?
that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is
'Cause he said it.
absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you
Just
with
talking about how
flattery
great Putin
and
was,
favor.
how close he was.
And that
Yeah.
is why
He set himself
so
up.
many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That
Ooh,
is
you
why
are disgraced.
we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime
He
rates
can't
are
get
way
off of
down.
immigration. It's the only thing he has that he can talk
There
about.
last week.
He doesn't have
He said,
anything
"I hope
else.
he wins." And I think he meant it.
Not talking immigration.
Because what he's gotten
Yeah.
away with
He's not
is
talking immigration.
absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
thank you with a lot of
She
issues.
just like roll her eyes like what?
For this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Are they finally gonna take a commercial? Oh my God.
I didn't know they were allowed to take.
Okay.
Please. You just joined us.
They had to probably take a commercial because he need to change his depends. Okay, he need to change his depends. She is handing him his ass. He can't keep on task. He is losing it every time they talk about something. I was the biggest. I was this. This is what I said on Twitter. I said, how many times he said, like, I was the best, or I was this, or I was that. He is in his shit. He cannot deal. This is good. And I think that what it does is uncover everything. So I want to hear what you have to say, because I'm just like sitting up here laughing because everything he said has been wrong.
Part of it too is right. Like you're watching him and he's coming. It's the same. She called it the same tired playbook.
Yeah.
All these people, used to hearing this going on and on. I can't
Mhm.
believe he cited as a source, as a fact check, Fox News hosts.
Oh
Right?
yeah, of course he did.
Like,
That's all he listens to.
I don't
He
see
barely listens to them.
but like who are you trying to appeal to? You're not getting more people. You're not getting the suburban soccer moms. You're not getting the black
No.
who are worried, you know, or the young. Like that's nothing he has said tonight makes him more appealing to other people. And it's all it is a
Nothing.
reminder of what we
Mhm.
experienced for 4 years and the chaos and anxiety and what we felt. I'm like, I just thank
Yeah.
God that she is reacting and taking this in different directions and you know just
Mhm.
having that energy that we need because otherwise it's just all of that feeling comes back just listening to him.
Yeah, yeah. And but what she's doing is she's pushing every one of his buttons and he's going for it. He is going for it. It's rattled him. He is just a
You-
mess.
When he brought up crowd sizes out of nowhere, I was like,
he-
oh
yeah,
no.
yeah. Oh, the crowd size, because that was also penis size for him, because he knows what
Little fingers,
Obama did to him.
little fingers.
I know, and all the jokes around Philly today when they had I don't know if you've seen it, the pretzel that was like halfway. This was him. You need to see these. They were great. They put up some really great stuff. But here's the thing. I think that this is going to be embarrassing for him. He is going to go ballistic after this because what he can't stand is to be turned up. And there's no way to say that he did well right now. I mean,
You know,
if we stopped right now, it would be a disaster for him. But he's going to keep going.
so low. The threshold for him is not interrupting, not right, like speaking coherently. I mean,
Yeah.
he's met that bare minimum.
Yeah, he's met the bare minimum, but what did he sound like when he met the bare minimum? He can't even meet the bare minimum. Nothing he said has been coherent tonight. He won't answer the questions. The January 6th question was very good. What I have liked about both of the people here have been that they've kept coming back to the same questions. And they fact checked him, especially when he was fact checked about the abortion after birth thing. That was great because it was just like, there is no abortion after birth. What are you talking
That
about?
one,
Right? You have a newborn.
my
Yeah.
little,
But
it's just
that had to be said.
yes, and it also
It had to be
they
said.
led. I'm so glad that they led the second question to economy and then abortion. Donald Trump just doubled down on all of the issues about his abortion policy that are inconsistent, that are upsetting people. Like he just needs to not talk about that at all.
And bad.
Himself in more and more trouble.
Uh-oh. You're dropping.
I can
Yeah. Yeah, I think,
Ooh, I think we might have lost Dr. Butler there for a moment. Yeah, the entire
last week
that
for-
oh, there we go. Yeah, we were talking about
what the problem is for him is that he's in a bind because he said so many things about this. Now his people won't believe him.
yeah. And it's like he's trying to come up with one logic of like, oh, states' rights. You're like, guys, states' rights are what are pissing people off. Like,
Not it.
oh, yeah, the Kansas, that surprised people. It was very liberal. Like, yes, you should have listened to that.
Yeah.
People are upset. They are taking this issue
People
up.
very upset.
And so they're trying to argue states' rights as if it's some like, y'all, you realize that states' rights is codes for we like slavery. I mean, like it's helping yourself here.
Yeah. But he doesn't even understand what it means. So no wonder he would think that, right? I mean, what this shows is just the lack of, any kind of preparation on this man's part. He said he didn't prepare. And now you can tell because he's just been everywhere. So I think they're about to come back. But yeah, I think I had to say the ABC moderators have done an excellent job.
And they're including his own policies and statements in the question, which is the best thing to do.
This conflict.
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives
Not
that
the
are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more. because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done
Yeah.
than we are.
He doesn't want these
They're in
people
for
to win.
$150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president. Okay, they respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
They threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know.
He's like a dog. Now he's like a dog.
We have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war?
back.
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up?
And that
Lots of Ukrainians in Philadelphia too.
What is known to be
they
a
are
dictator
biting on this question.
who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier. And please, I'll give you a minute here.
Why foreign policy?
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women.
We don't care.
But he would have been sitting in Moscow.
He was the
quiet
one who
place.
invaded
He
another
would have been
country.
sitting
He
in
doesn't care about
Moscow,
those people.
much
Just like you
happier
wouldn't
than he is
care.
right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that.
So you're
And
supposed
He wants somebody
eventually,
to drop a bomb
maybe
so
he'll
bad.
use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody
we
likes to
have
talk
talked about
about it. But just so you
Everybody's talked
understand,
about it.
they
Why has
sent
he
her
been?
to negotiate peace before this war
target
started. 3 days
nuclear
later, he
strikes.
went in and he started the
Such a
war
champion.
Didn't
because
flip.
everything they said
They
was
called
weak
Putin
and
a
stupid.
bluff.
They
We
said
have
the
talked.
wrong things. That war should have never started.
This
She was the
entire
emissary. They
Russia's
sent her in to negotiate with
mouth.
Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later.
Vice
And
President?
that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one.
Mhm.
When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of
Mhm.
caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander in chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO.
He has given her
I got
so
them
much
to pay
commercial
up by
time.
saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay,
It's
we're
all
not
about
going to
paying.
protect you.
President
Otherwise, we
Trump.
would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I
Also,
want to turn to
by the way,
Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate,
It's not
and
a
we
thing
witnessed a poignant
with
moment
money.
today on Capitol
That's
Hill,
not
honoring the soldiers who
Yeah.
died in
We-
the chaotic withdrawal from
But they do the
Afghanistan. I do
war
want to ask the Vice
over
President,
there. That's how
do you
that
believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
It's just amazing to me how dumb
Well,
he
I will
is.
tell you, I agreed with
God, it's just
President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine.
Well,
He
they're in
calls
other
himself a
places.
deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban.
Yeah,
The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because
They
they deal with
had
the wrong people all the time.
Afghan
But
national.
I got involved.
I
And
know. He's
Abdul
crazy.
is the
So
head
crazy.
of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban.
Hi,
And I
Amy.
told Abdul, don't
Hi,
do it
man.
anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason
Apparently,
it was good,
Trump and
it was we were
knew
getting
it was
out.
really-
We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left
talking about.
$85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move
And
on.
these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country.
Uh-oh.
Mr. President, you
Oh.
recently
Uh-oh.
said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was
That was
black
the
until a
end, when
number
he's
of years
all
ago
amped
when she
up and
happened to turn
retired.
black,
Do that.
and now she
Here we
wants to
go.
be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care.
But
I
you
don't
did.
care what she is.
But you
I don't
did-
care.
I don't care what she is.
You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less.
But you did.
Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out. And
Oh, she put out.
And
Oh,
then
shit.
I read
This
that she was black.
motherfucker. I'm
And that's
sorry.
okay.
Say that?
Everyone was okay.
Yes, he
with
just
me.
did.
That's up to her.
I
That's
guess
up
he
to her.
Vice President
just
Harris,
did
your
say
thoughts on
it,
this?
y'all.
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to Black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times
Bring it up.
calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5.
Who she happened to bring out.
Took out a full-page ad calling
Convenient.
for
At the
their
DNC.
execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other.
She
I
didn't.
meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled
Man,
guilty.
he is going for everything.
And I said, well, if they
Looks
pled
his fool.
guilty, they badly hurt a person,
Ain't
killed a
looks
person
like an
ultimately.
absolute
And if they pled
fuckhead.
guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's
40,
nothing
50
now. I built one of the
wasn't even that
greatest
long.
economies in the history of the
What do you
world,
know?
and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst
say that.
inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up, Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses
You don't have no
$50,000
plans.
tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development.
This
I
man
have
is
a
so horrible.
plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump,
Let's turn to policy,
She
please.
has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
She
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking
even-
in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry.
I
We're
just
gonna
need to
move on,
respond
Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
Correct.
Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember
This is
this,
awful.
I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be? Never going to be great. Or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money, and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop.
She's a gun owner. I mean, she can cap your ass.
As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where
I did not know this about her.
When
I
Donald
did not
Trump
know
was
this.
president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time.
Oh, this is going to be
I
interesting.
will never
That's a
forget
new
the
factoid.
early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully,
Best part was
as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice
pass this
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made
of
a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to give. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard
don't
to
care
the
about climate
environment, you
change,
say that
please.
we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels, We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs
Oh my
this
God.
last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases
Just 10 years
owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't
Wow.
go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine.
He's been yelling
They
for
get all
almost
this
2
money
hours.
from all of these different countries. And then
I
you
mean,
wonder,
isn't he
why
tired
is
by
he
now?
so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million?
He's also gone
This is
full
a
on
crooked
conspiracy theory
administration,
mode.
Yeah,
and
totally.
they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right, ladies, this is only our second commercial break.
Yeah.
That second one was a lot.
It was
Amy,
a lot.
you're just chiming in. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he started off relatively muted in the beginning of the debate for Trump. And then he just went in, as I just mentioned, like into full on like conspiracy theory, let's see what sticks kind of mode. I mean, I've been hearing from Republicans who are like, this is not how he should be at all. Like he should be,
I want to know what they're saying. Please tell us.
I mean, they
Besides,
think
this is not how he should be.
they think the debate has been unfair. I'm hearing a lot of that.
Okay, unfair. Tell me.
Like they
It's not
feel
unfair.
like
This is who he is.
they feel like they haven't fact checked Kamala as much as they have for the former president. I'm hearing a lot of that. There is a lot of complaining about the way this debate was handled behind the scenes.
That's set up and format complaints, right?
Yeah.
And set up and format complaints are what people fall back on when you can't speak positively about the actual performance.
Yeah, I know. And they're not happy with the performance.
Yeah.
Like they think that he should have stuck with the issues. A lot of them are disappointed. Why can't he stay on message? Why is he doing this? Yeah. And that was like the main point of this.
This totally keeps coming up that, and I've heard this from longstanding Trump supporters, like, if he can just stay on message and, focus on the policy, I'm like, but that's never, you guys always used to talk about how this guy was off the cuff. Let Trump be Trump. People want that. I'm like, well, they've got that now.
Well, you look at the last debate.
Trump, he has.
I feel like in the last debate, though, don't you think that he kind of stayed on message against Biden more than this one, clearly? He lied a lot, clearly, and told a lot of untruths, but there was like a lot more, he was like a little more in control of himself.
Okay. Yeah. See him visibly, like he's visibly upset and triggered.
Yeah.
What do you think? Thea pointed out a moment where she thought, oh, she got to him. I thought it was because Anthony, you weren't on yet with us, but I thought it was first mentioned the crowds, and you could see like, is part of why he's gone full on conspiracy. Is that just because that's just generally where he goes after 90 minutes, or
it's where he goes? He doesn't hold it together for his speeches. These are what his speeches are like. So the speeches are rambling and crazy and everywhere, and the crowds are there, and that's why they get up and leave. So that's why when she said people are leaving, he lost it because he knows it's true.
Yeah.
That's a problem for him because they aren't staying. And he was lying about, that's not really her crowds and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, that's really her crowds. It's bugging the shit out of you. And it's bugging you. And he's not keeping them like he did back in 2016 or even 2020. So, and plus he hasn't paid anybody, so he can't be in any normal places. Because, if you don't pay your bills, I don't care how many
after
billions you say and lie about. But yeah.
Vendors stop wanting to work with you,
Yeah.
literally. They don't want to help you organize your event or provide security or, the fencing or all the other.
Yeah, nobody's going to work with you. Nobody's going to work with you. And now they have to have even more stuff because of the assassination attempt. But now it's like,
blame that on them, on the Democrats, when
he can't blame it on anybody. It's well, he's trying to. But his issue is that he can't do this because you screwed the pooch, basically. Let me just say it like they would say it in the in the political terms. He screwed this up himself. Nobody did this to him. He did it to himself. And so everything, whether you talk about January 6th or the rallies or whatever, I have the concept of a plan. That's not a plan, fool. That's not a plan. This is like, you don't have anything. And it shows because you're yelling and screaming like an old, tired man. And you don't have anything. And this young woman is making all kinds of faces looking at you going like, damn, what's wrong with you?
She was definitely giving off mom versus toddler.
Yeah, it was just like, it was sad. There's people on Twitter right now saying, well, this isn't going to matter. I'm like, it matters to me because I live in Pennsylvania. I'm going to see this shit on commercials from now to November. Okay. Yes, it matters. I don't understand people saying it's not going to move the needle, blah, blah, blah. He just looked like an ass clown for the last, an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah. Someone pointed out on Twitter that Hillary Clinton won her 2 debates against him and didn't really do much for her, obviously. So
no, but she won the popular vote and we can talk about what happened there, but yeah.
The popular vote, not the Electoral College.
Not the Electoral College, right. And the thing is that, I'll say this when we get done.
Okay.
Different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future and the other that is focused on the past and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that The American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News.
They did a really good job, I should say.
I think overall, I think the one thing I would say before I tap out, because I have to get on early train tomorrow morning, is that, you know, they allowed him a lot more time, and they did not cut him off as much. But I think overall, what we could see here is a man that is decompensated and not doing well. And everything that they've said about him, for somebody like me who's been listening to him for a long time, he is so much worse than he was in 2016 and 2020. In 2024, he's basically incoherent. And if people want to vote for this, that's fine. But damn.
Dr. Butler, before we let you go, Jamal.
Hey.
Hi, Jamal.
Everybody. And I just wanted to, that's such a thing that we hear now is like, oh, well, you know, Trump's always been this way and da-da-da-da. You know, the reason why we talked about Biden, because his decline was obvious. And you're saying you're seeing this decline.
Oh, yeah. Those of us anybody who's been watching him for a long time can see the decline. He can't even hold together a sentence. He can't keep on task. He can't keep on any message. He can't keep on anything. She baited him this entire thing, and he picked it up every moment. And he could not stand it. And it drove him nuts. He couldn't look at her. You know, like remember back in 2015, 2016, he was stalking Hillary on the stage. He was walking behind her. He was trying to intimidate her and everything. He couldn't even look at her. He wouldn't even look her way. He just kept doing his little faces. Because I think if he looked at her, he just might have wanted to go over there and choke her to death.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he wasn't going to. She went over and made him.
Yeah.
And I would love to know what happened afterwards. I wish I would see afterwards, because I'm sure he didn't shake her hand after either. I'm sure he ran off stage.
No, they just cut the feed. They're like, all right, we're done.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm sure he's like ready to lose his shit. But anyway, I agree with you. I hope it helped. Man. But
I could watch you watching something any day.
I know, I'm just gonna talk because I'm like that person in the theater you want to hit. Shut up.
No, we're gonna find some more stuff like that, because you were just like, what? Oh,
I know what?
My God.
I know.
One quick thing, because we the three of us, Jamal, were like, whoa, did he just say that? Did he just?
Yes, he did. Yes, he said put out. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Did he say what?
He said it. He said, well, I read about her that she puts out.
She said that she was black and she put out.
Yeah, I could write a whole thing on that. I mean,
I think I missed that.
Oh, no, I heard it.
Oh,
don't worry. The Divine Nine will never forget that he said it, however.
And then he also went, it's like, oh, well, she missed a vote because, you know, she didn't want to, she didn't want to come to see Putin or she didn't want to come to see Netanyahu because, you know, she had a sorority party.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah. I did hear
I'm
that.
like, dude, you're going after the wrong people now. You're going after the wrong people. They're going to ski all over you. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Well, we all know Donald Trump put out.
Well, yes, that's true. And he wanted it, but he put out anyway.
In her testimony, she said she wasn't even quite sure if they had sex. Yeah. Yeah.
I would like to remind you all before I leave what Stormy Daniels said. Mushroom. And on that note, I will leave.
Thank you.
This is the job of historian to remember what people say. Thanks, Ari. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Wow. Amy Parnes, how are you?
Hi, I'm okay. How are you? What did you think? Your former boss.
So man, what a debate. What a debate. It was, you know, I was very careful for the last couple of weeks to try to lower expectations because I wanted to give her room to impress.
Mhm.
And I think that she really did. She was impressive. I think she just did a fantastic job. But, you know, it was all the points that I think the professor just made, but it was also like she just baited him like from the very first answer when she was talking about the economy and she said that the Wharton School economists also our plan was better. I knew it at that moment, and he couldn't let it go. He's like, no, I gotta come back. I went to the Wharton School of Finance, you know.
And on crowd size, I mean, you know.
Yes, the crowd size question.
The world leaders are laughing at you. And she looked right at him. Like she turned her face like they are laughing at you.
And generals say that you're a disgrace. I mean, it's just like over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then he was just kind of unhinged. He was yelling at us and just making things up about their record and what they believed or didn't want to do. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, I totally agree. I felt like she was, I remember you telling me at some point that she was, you were kind of lowering expectations. And I feel like, I mean, every text I got from people tonight, even my friends in Florida who are kind of on the fence, said, yeah, she was very impressive. Yeah.
Not that she won, but like overall, like that's what I was wondering is outside those of us who know and have a sense of the personalities and what we wanted to see, right? Like, who watch this all the time, in this idea of this is the first introduction of her to many people, first introduction in that strong prosecutor way. Like, can people handle that coming from Kamala Harris and from a woman side by side, a white man?
Yeah.
So I have a couple of things from a campaign official who texted me. They did battleground undecided voter dial groups.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the vice president's response on January 6th saying it's time to end the chaos, turn the page, and return to stability was very strong. One of the strongest answers of the night among men. The lowest point of the debate so far for Trump was him continuing to talk about how he actually won the 2020 election. Here's the other one that they sent me. Harris's response to Trump's racial comments, where she said there's more that unites Americans than divides us, is the strongest moment of the night for her. Strong with both men and women. Key moment was that Americans want better than this.
Yeah. She was almost very Biden-esque about it all, about uniting everyone. There were some strong Biden themes, I think, from 2020 about bringing everyone together. Which is why I think the handshake was a very bold move. It's like kind of like, okay, he hadn't shaken anyone's hand since 2016.
What's he gonna say? No, right? Like she's gonna put it out. He's like, no, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah,
she got right in his grill from the very moment. It was perfect.
But she got in his grill, I think, without falling into any of those stereotypes that women often get, right? And again, this is their immediate reaction. I don't know how other people who are, maybe boomer writers will talk about her performance and delivery, but there was nothing shrill or, too composed. She sounded like a real person, a real woman who is just kind of done with some bullshit. And I'm just going to tell you how it is. Like, this is what's really happening and this is what's going on. And okay, I'm just going to stand here and listen to you, but nobody else wants to deal with this anymore. Like that's the feeling I got was, all right, I'm going to be your stand-in now. And I'm going to stand in here and listen to all of this because I have to.
Yeah.
But I'm translating for you all Americans and viewers. This is chaos. We're not going back. he keeps talking about again and backwards and hate and them. And I'm, I don't look at people and say, you and you, what your color is. I ask, are you okay? What do you need? And that all of her personal stories to like connect these issues. She even brought foreign policy home to the Polish American community, which for me personally is like, well done. Well done. Because that can be such a nerdy topic, but she brought that home and it really struck out to me. I don't think I've ever heard Trump share a personal story. Have you guys? Like talking about a policy issue, a personal story of somebody he's worked with or somebody he helped who exemplifies the issue that he's talking about.
Oh yeah, you mean so Trump talking about policy first of all, like let's start there. How often does that happen?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. He doesn't really talk about policy.
Like,
And
I talked to a guy and this is what his experience was.
personal stories. Yeah, he doesn't talk about. Yeah.
Okay.
No, he rambles, which is what he started doing tonight too. It started sounding more like one of his rallies than a debate.
Oh, here was my other favorite line. I had to find it. Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people, and clearly he's having a very hard time processing that.
Yeah. He started talking about firing people. I mean, it sounded very Apprentice.
Well, again,
Yes.
There are companies that are contracting and doing layoffs right now, like, forced reductions. And this guy's bragging about firing people. It's just very off the moment. It just, and it's just a stark reminder that you can't keep recycling the same talking points that are 4 years ago. I mean, for any campaign, any leader, you got to keep it evolving or it just doesn't hit right.
I felt like the low point also of the night was like eating their dogs and eating their cats. It's like who would have gone there?
I don't know.
So can I admit that I was not really aware of the immigrants eating pets story?
No, I was not.
I caught like some tinge of it when I was on TV earlier. I was at CNN earlier, and someone brought it up like in the commercial break, and then so I didn't really have time to follow up on it. Since tonight, they started talking about it in the debate, and so I was sitting here thinking, are we talking about pets people eating pets?
It's a right-wing meme or story that has now started to get debunked. It is about that Haitian migrants are eating people's dogs and pets.
Yeah.
It's very particularly like a certain group of people is doing this. Watch out for that. I mean, but it also shows how he lives, right? The rest of us are like, wait, what is he? Wait, where is this coming from? What? Like, I think actually between the three of us, we barely got our kids to bed just to jump in and debate like nerds, right? Like that's what our reality right now for all three of us. And he's just living in right-wing memes that he's like, oh yeah. What the? You know what you're talking about.
So speaking of memes, the kids are going crazy right now with the Kamala Harris face memes.
Oh yeah. I knew it.
It's this one because I'm practicing that now.
There were so many good faces out of tonight. I kept thinking about Biden with his mouth agape and then you contrast it with tonight. And
it is, and Trump just had the same like kind of grumpy cat look on his face the whole time.
Except when he was yelling and screaming and sort of frothing at the mouth. Those were kind of his two looks, like the angry scowl, and then the
Okay, so we've seen.
Get off my lawn,
Amy. What's your angry scowl? What's your Trump look?
My Trump look is very dour, like, yeah.
That's a constipated Trump look.
Yeah, which was most of tonight.
It was a lot. And look, I think that they did a good job. The questioners did a good job at like asking him to follow up on stuff. Like, oh, that was my other one. I think it was Lindsay Davis asked him, "Well, sir, do you have a plan?" And he said, "Well, I have concepts for a plan."
It was a plan to defeat Obamacare. I'm not president yet. I have
concepts. They held his feet to the fire on that stuff, like just enough without being like really inserting themselves or fact checking a couple things. Like when on the abortion debate, and Lindsay came back and she said, for the record, there are no states where you can kill babies after they were born. It's not legal anymore. Go on to the next question.
No, I just was like that. That's right. Like the things that they had to say, or just literally just repeat their original question. Like what we asked about was, do you want Ukraine to win?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what we're asking. Can you answer that? Yeah.
And kudos to the moderators. I felt like they really came prepared, and the fact checking was really good. And I think a lot of people respected the format tonight, minus the Republicans I'm hearing from, who were like, "Oh, this was so skewed."
Oh yeah, yeah, because it had facts in it,
right?
And
well, they brought up in their questions things both of them had said, but they weren't generic. And you're right. I noticed this in earlier, like the last presidential election, more generic questions. This was specifically, you said blah 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 question, and they did the same for Harris too, right? Like they were directly. Yeah. She just didn't get upset when people presented her with herself. Even being presented with himself, Trump has a problem with that.
Yeah. There's one more. I think that she did a good job kind of always pivoting back to, this is about the future and we just don't have to go back to this. It was just kind of like, guys, I mean, you really wanted her to be like, guys, we don't have to do this.
We literally another option. And she didn't even say, I'm the best, right? It's not like Trump goes, only me kind of thing. She's not like, we just don't need to do that again.
She also got to kind of lay out her prosecutor in chief skills, I think, by like actually going after him as a convicted felon. Yeah. And I felt like that moment was a really good moment for her, where she could actually kind of show her skill in a way, and kind of remind people who he is.
Yeah. Look, it's an interesting thing. I think Trump had a lot of opportunity to do something different, to present plans, to present himself and be focused on the future, to, make whatever contrast he wanted to make with the Biden record, and the fact that the inflation is still too high for a lot of people and that sort of thing. But he wasn't able to do it. He just wasn't able to hold himself together.
Bacon and chicken, bacon and eggs and something else, and people can't buy that. It is just, it's hard when he's not grounding it in anything resembling a personal experience.
Yeah.
What was that riff he did about student loans and how that was terrible, or it wasn't enough? I really had a hard time making sense of where he was going. All I remember thinking was, people wanted Biden to do more student loan debt relief, more. Like, so what are you criticizing here? The fact that he did it, or he didn't do enough? Are you saying you would do, what?
Yeah, it was weird. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And did they even talk about climate change, or did that get
derailed? They did a little bit toward the end.
But actually, I mean, the moderators brought it up.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. You're right. I don't think they did, at least to the extent of, I mean, they talked a little bit about fracking and how she has evolved on issues in the beginning. They kind of tried to come back to it, but yeah.
Amy, you interview people all the time in states, right? And battleground states in particular. How much is the individual states have particular issues going to be the thing, right? Because it's an electoral college game.
Yeah.
They had this in Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris has been in Pennsylvania several days. The Democratic path requires Pennsylvania, yada, yada. Like, is fracking the thing that's going to turn some of these counties? Like, is it really a specific policy issue?
It could be, because when you look at what this election's going to come down to, a few thousand people in a few key states. And if someone's on the line, on the fence about fracking and is like, I don't know how she really feels about it, I think they tuned into tonight and either were pleased by what she said about it or could be dissuaded. I think more so. I'm curious to see how this plays out, because a lot was put on to tonight. But as I mentioned before, look what happened to Hillary Clinton. She clearly won her debates and it didn't really move the needle. So I wonder if it's going to be I just heard that Taylor Swift endorsed, by the way, breaking news from a campaign.
She did.
Yeah, a campaign aide just texted me to say that. So there you go.
Is that serious?
No, it's serious.
I'm
I
like
just
up now.
I
Taylor-
heard it from someone on the campaign.
I mean, amazing timing, and then just got Beyonce like a week before the actual election.
Wait, we could break the internet. You could have a Taylor Swift and Beyonce duet at a
Convention. Come on.
what?
I said, don't be starting
No.
rumors. That's what broke the Democratic convention.
I know.
Yeah.
Could you
I
imagine
was-
if Taylor Swift and Beyonce did a duet at a Kamala Harris concert event, fundraising event? That would be the end of like all time. People would stop moving. There would be bodies on the floor writhing in ecstasy.
Even the Country Music Awards would have to recognize Beyonce at that point. And that really would be that for that group, right? Because they Taylor started there and left. They got all upset about that, didn't.
Well, Chris Stapleton could play the guitar.
That'll do it.
and Luke Combs could do like a backup singer, and he could do a whole thing.
No, throw in Dolly. Throw in Jolene. She did Jolene with Beyonce, right? Like just done. That's it. Like that. Those three women. That's it. We're done.
Yeah. No, but apparently this is coming from a campaign aide who just texted me proactively to say that.
I'm refreshing Google here and I'm not seeing it yet, but I'm now also quickly trying to think of which Taylor song would be appropriate here.
Ironically, we were just talking about Pennsylvania when that happened. So for what it's worth, because she's from Pennsylvania.
She?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oops.
I think that's where she grew up, like Christmas Tree Farm. Those are her roots.
Do you just know this because you're a reporter, or there's a secret Taylor fandom here?
No. I'm actually not a Taylor Swift fan, but I somehow have this knowledge of her.
Wow, that would be something.
Oh, this source tells me to check her Instagram.
Check Taylor's Instagram. All right, let's do it right now. While we're here live. This is live checking.
I can't believe that. Just would be amazing.
Like many of you, I watched the debate tonight. If you haven't already, now's a good time to register to vote. And she's with her cat.
Oh yeah, I gotta take a time. I will be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in 2024.
Yeah.
Wow. When are the Chiefs
So
playing?
you heard it here first.
I mean,
did.
breaking news. Amy Parnes. Okay,
Yes. Breaking.
folks.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes her, Kamala Harris's, whether you call it a win or success tonight and presentation tonight, and just amps it up to a totally different level, right? Because you imagine the Taylor fandom, all the attention, the fact that she is weighing in on this election, and the memification of what Kamala Harris, her faces or expressions or even the phrases, like there's just no similar cultural energy that Trump can tap into to bring in undecided and infrequent voters, right? The biggest, that 3 to 4% that's missing right now is people who may just sit at home on their sofa.
Yeah.
How do those people, and who gets those people? I don't see anything Trump did in the last 2 hours or what he could pull out in the next hour that would help him with that group.
Right.
I mean, like, not like endorsements make things happen for people, but that vibes, energy, positivity, all of that.
Yeah. And there's no bigger star, clearly, than her, other than maybe Beyonce, who never showed up at the DNC. But yeah. So this
there
this
it is.
actually might trump
Yeah.
the debate.
Yeah, and I like your use of the word Trump there. I think it was accidental, but I'm just going to note that that was an excellent pun right there.
Yes. Yes.
I think we should end on this high note. Another pun. Thank you. I've never met a pun I don't like. And I'd like to consider myself a punny person. But on that high note, I think we should call it a wrap for tonight here at Politicon.
Guys.
I don't know if you know this, but Jamal and I may be doing some things together going forward.
Very excited.
Yes. We got something coming. It's cooking. It's cooking.
It's great. I can't wait.
We're lighting some fires over here.
I like it. I like it a lot.
All right.
Exactly.
Needs more of you guys.
Well, I'm really glad that you were able to stick around with us for this because it's actually been, I mean, this is something I actually think the three of us would have done had we actually lived in the same cities and still worked in DC together. So it's nice to be able to do this virtually and bring some other folks along with us. So love you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.